Starting things off, I'm 26 years old, graduated from college in fall of 2023 in mechanical engineering. Entering the workforce, I was originally working for a company which did automation engineering, essentially building robots and control systems for factories that wanted to build some kind of automatic way of accomplishing their goal of making stuff. Um, Pretty quickly, I noticed out of school how fake everything felt. Like the sale of getting a degree in the first place was more or less a joke. I always felt like that would be the case. Early into my college years, especially, ideas that I had going into college, like around high school and stuff. I didn't think that the degree was very valuable. I only really saw it as a piece of paper for buying my way into quote unquote adult society. But whenever I was finishing up college, I learned that the reason for the degree was the fact that I could get professionally connected to networks of like minded people and really just kind of figure out how to gauge what my interests were in more of like a modern context. I mean, I feel like that's valuable enough to have warranted the time I spent there. Um, the degree, I guess, was just like more of a pin. It like held that system together, you know. But on getting out of my first, getting my first job in college was more or less exercise in futility. I mean, like we had this big issue where a client that we were working with, they just wanted to have a thing written in Python, and nobody that worked there knew Python. So on the job application, I just said that I knew what Python was, and they they hired me like instantly, which was a joke because it's like, I mean, you'd hire like a software guy or something, but they hired a mechanical engineer, I guess. I don't know. Uh, yeah, but like essentially, like I did feel like that the degree didn't matter. And whenever I got out of college, it just was this reinforcement of that idea. I mean, like I knew that it mattered in the context of the professional connections I made, but then like all that didn't matter after I got out of college. Mostly because it was like, yeah, I can message those people and maybe get like job opportunities or something, but it didn't really matter outside of like the fact that I could like talk to them about what they were going through and figuring out kind of different expectations for what we had for each other. Um, but yeah, like I really got that job, like I said, just to figure some stuff out outside of college. But I remember the hard day that we had that really kind of indicated to me that there was a big problem in industry, which is kind of the subject of this video. The idea that like majority of training is built around like isolation and trying to find out who doesn't fit and then like hit those people as hard as possible to get them to fit. Um, a lot of people I worked with just talked about how they got that job out of convenience. Like in front of them, they were going and looking for their job, but it ultimately meant that they had like no other prospects. Like they all talked about how it was like, oh, you know, I worked in this like factory or something whenever I was like growing up throughout high school, or I worked in this environment with like my dad or whatever, and then like whenever college happened, because it just happened to them, they didn't have to like actually work hard to get through it or something. I don't know. They just got into the job because quote it just sounded cool or whatever. I think the biggest problem that industry has is this exact mentality. I mean, it's like how many people do you know in what jobs that you have that kind of didn't like choose to be there? They just kind of like floated into that position out of like convenience's sake, but then will always bitch and moan about things that like only have to do with like their decision making having been convenient so much. Like they never actually really challenge themselves to do anything. I don't even really think I'm that good of an example of this. I mean, like ultimately, a lot of the stuff that I'm doing in my life is also based out of convenience. But I mean, it gets really frustrating where we're only talking about shit just in context of like that experience, I guess. So, like, yeah, all right, you know, I'm able to be like convenient in my life to a point, but then I like didn't do the things that were convenient that probably would have made me more money. Like just sticking to whatever engineering job I had rather than like doing this or something, like whatever it is I'm up to this month. But yeah, like at no point did anyone in that like position choose their positions. They just kind of like fell into their lap at some point, and you know maybe it's just because they had kids or whatever. It was just the best course of action to do whatever was convenient. And I think this is why like everything felt so fake. I was surrounding myself with people like, in college who were like doing what they wanted to do because they genuinely had an emboldened passion for that subject, and suddenly they're forced into working autonomy, where it didn't matter if it was just those larger goals or the smaller ideas that got them through college. They just got through college, and before they knew it, you know, they're just being like put into like the corporate hellscape of everything, and then everybody's like wondering like, oh God, why is there no like younger working engineers? I'd imagine the sensations a lot of the same for people that didn't even go through college, but instead just had to like get out of high school, but probably to an even greater degree, because at that rate, like society seems even more made up because you're going to be working with people that like didn't have to push themselves through something that was stupid and disagreeable like college in the first place. You know, I mean, I'd imagine like if you're like an auto body repair shop guy, like I've worked in like diesel tech positions and shit, and like half of my coworkers were like drug addicts or something, and like the amount of psychic damage that would do to like an 18-year-old, I think was crazy. Is like they see like a 35-year-old who's like 3 or 4 times in and out of like different like jails or whatever, and then they're having to like think to themselves like, oh fuck, did I make the right choice? Like, should I have gone to school? But then like they also know that they're emboldened by the skills that they've built, and honestly, at the end of the day, that's all that matters. I could be a testament to this. Like a lot of the work that I did fresh out of college in that first job was strictly just stuff that we could have asked a slightly intelligent high schooler to try. You know, it's like I'd imagine, like I said, that's pretty bad for people. But to those people, I'd also further say like most college requirements in industry are totally made up. Like anyone could have done that job. But you know, coming back into it, like I think majority of people in this economy are just making their decisions out of convenience for like what they have in their immediate surroundings, like with their family and stuff. And this kind of leads to like a culture where people are like so used to ducking their heads down and working really hard and doing the job, unquote, that like it makes for a system that now nobody like knows how to like look up above like where everybody's heads are being pushed down to do the job and like look at the direction they're going, and it just ends up being this like really crappy situation. I mean, this happened in the job that I had. We had like a lot of managers that were just making really like weird decisions, and I kept on, you know, bringing it up in meetings and stuff. I'd be like, hey guys, like I don't know if you knew that this was happening, but like, you know, we're losing money on this contract or whatever. And they kept on saying like, oh, just do the job, like don't worry about stuff, like that's not your position, like you're supposed to not worry about things. And I'm like, all right, you know, screw this. And later down the line, like, you know, and I'll probably get into like some of this topic in like future videos or something, but like we had like a lot of really rough patches that just pushed me out of it, and I quit. And then 2 months after I quit, the whole department got like their head cut off. Like the divisional manager got fired, and then like everybody underneath him, pretty much. And so we went from like they went from a department of like 15 to like 1 or 2, and then eventually that guy just got reabsorbed into the larger part of the business. It was just like, okay, so like what did keeping your head down and pushing that hard even do for you then? You know, I mean, that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like I feel like that there's training issues in industry, just based off of the incentives that young people have to like go into college and then further go into a career field after college. That just seems super one-sided, and even if they get through that, there's like layoff waves or hiring problems that then just lead to like a bunch of like disenfranchised like 20-somethings like me. That's not to say that I'm like that disenfranchised. I feel like I'm doing okay these days, but you know, it's like kind of annoying that like the entire concept of industry is sold to people on the idea that like things make sense and like, oh, these are all parts of rules that will work themselves out. And then they get into reality, and like the rules in question are like just old people being assholes about like being more experienced or something. You know, I mean, and yeah, like it was kind of nice that like I got to see the department collapse 2 months after I kept on telling them like, hey guys, the department's gonna collapse, because it was like a big reinforcement that I actually kind of like knew what I was doing, and especially going to the next job that I had, that was like a huge deal. I think a lot of the working world works in the way of like making and doing things out of convenience. Like the majority of people that you talk to are disinterested in trying to work a little bit harder to make the world around them a little bit better. Like their value system extends just to the confines of their own family. I mean, ultimately that's fine because it's not like anyone except for that person's family really matters to that person. But let me ask you this. I mean, is your family being helped by a lack of decision making in the grand scale of problems that exist? Like, you know, if you're a person that's just trying to like shelter yourself from conflict or like even not make uncomfortable decisions in context of what could be better if you just decided to be uncomfortable for like 6 months to a year, then like what else is going on that would really like hurt you? You know, I just think that that's kind of an interesting topic. Maybe it's not like in a societal context, like something like politics, but at least in like your career, like an individual level. Like, kind of going back to like a diesel tech example, I had a coworker who like knew he could probably make it through school if he felt like it, but just didn't feel like it, whatever that meant. And in reality, it just kind of comes down to the fact that it's like, okay, so like you just know you're lazy then, you know? But like that guy has like two kids and a wife, and it's kind of nuts because it's like, he decided to do something that he thinks was easier, which is diesel tech work. But then every day he'll complain about how hard the job is, or talk about how people that are working in offices don't have it as hard as he does. But then we'll talk about how like, oh, these guys that went to college or whatever, like, they didn't actually have to work a job. Like, dude, like they had to work. I was in the position working that job to make my way through college. Like, it makes no sense to have made that argument, but point is, it's like he was really doing something that was like mentally convenient. Like he didn't have to mentally challenge himself to do something that was physically inconvenient and physically challenge himself, but then overweighed that physical challenge to the point that it became like a non sequitur. Like you couldn't go into that argument and then like have it make sense. And it's like, you might not have great ideas, nor may you have good solutions for things, but I think it's worth examining yourself and your place in life to try to find out if your values and present identity as a worker, participant in society, or just like a human, in a scale of a little bit beyond of what's immediately next to you. Like I think a lot of people can be helped by that. Metaphorically, like to kind of wrap a bow on it, your department can experience a layoff right before something actually has the capacity to change, and then it's too little, too late. Like I'm imagining like that diesel tech guy, like he like breaks his arm or something, just to because he liked mountain biking or some shit. Who knows? And then like suddenly he can't do his job, and then what? Like, oh, all of your pride and goals that you had for like not going to college and then working a desk job somewhere goes out the window whenever you can't feed those same kids that were relying on you to like be so physically abusive to your own body to do the job. I mean, I'm not trying to like dig on the blue collar worker too hard, but I think it's the mentality that I'm after. Like it's people that go out there and then convince themselves that they're doing something that's really challenging, whenever in reality they know exactly what was challenging that they're ignoring. I mean, case example, I wrote this script and filmed this video as like a way of getting out of the mental energy of like having to do a thing that I have to do at my job. So like I'm not doing any better, but like I'm at least like trying to remain conscious of that. But to go like to the next point, like I found that this kind of attitude goes further to what I consider to be like a really massive problem in general industry, be it like general workers or in a blue collar sense or even a white collar sense. I haven't really found a lot of statistics on this, so this might be just like a local issue. I've got a lot of friends that have talked in industry, and they kind of agree that there's a big issue in training like new engineers and new workers in general. And yeah, okay, like before somebody hits me with the Redditor level, anecdotal evidence is just evidence of an anecdote. I want to put a reason here that like said anecdote is still as regular and repeating enough in my life for it to basically be as good as truth. Like I think I've conducted myself differently because of these kinds of attitudes, and I've found value there. So that's kind of like what I just want to like communicate and like hold off the quippy feedback until you hear me out. Essentially, industry's really bad at like reinforcing people who struggle. They're incentivized to hire people who are competent at the job on paper, but then replace their efforts with someone more competent if it costs them less to do that, right? So like, and like, okay, this makes perfect sense, but I'll give an example. Like, say for instance, you took work somewhere for $40,000 a year. Like, there's a chance that that place lost money in hiring you in the first couple of months to like train you to get up to the level where you're actually making them enough money to where you're worth $40,000 a year. And so within that, like, it's in that job's best interest to make you a professional. And make a professional system so clean and clear that you have as short of a turnover to be able to make money as quick as possible. Like, unless you're a bad actor, but like even further than that, it's best laid out so that way like anybody could theoretically have that job. But if anybody could theoretically have that job, why does that then incentivize like specific hiring decisions like at the level? Like if the business's prospect is to make a system so clean that the only way to hurt that system is to be a bad actor in the situation, then like why do businesses prioritize trying to find the right person so often whenever you could train like a particularly talented high schooler or something to do that exact same job? Like, case example, the job that I had, I only knew what Python was. That was my first job like directly in that position. And like the smartest companies out there like know the song and dance better than anybody. Like you can go to look at like tech companies or something, and they only hire reasonably off of like direct skills that person would have going in, as a function of figuring out if they're going to have to train those skills into you or not. But even in those cases, the skills in question are like super like just negligible stuff for like a working professional that's been through like multiple examples there. But I mean, that's the difference between multiple years in context or being in and out of college. But in those contexts, like I said, a talented high schooler can figure out how Git works or something else that makes them like pretty powerful in the context of grand industry, and they'd be doing better projects for themselves anyway. I think that's kind of like what I'm talking about, but it makes for this like really intense rhetoric that like the employee has to work to the expectations of the manager, but then the manager is just kind of holding those expectations based off of their own experience, who then in of themselves were also employees that got through that system that like evolved in that way. And it makes for just this like really crappy like feedback loop, you know, like where everybody's kind of like Mexican standoffing each other, where like different managers and employees are kind of like holding each other accountable. Whereas like in reality, if the system in general like of that business was just put to better practices where like everybody could just admit to themselves that fresh hires are not going to be good until like 2 years into the job, and then they're allowed to make decisions, and then they're capable of like proving themselves or not, and that's where like the actual hiring firing decisions get made. Or better yet, what if managers just made a professional system that allowed for that as like a system of shelter, and then like know what the business finances look like enough to just be capable of saying stuff like, oh, it's okay, we're running this guy at a loss for 6 months, and so I'm not going to hold him to like massive professional expectations so quickly. Maybe that's just like too much work for people to do, and like I'm like not even really identifying a real problem there. Maybe that is like just what happens. I don't know. I've never been a manager before for like, you know, anything beyond like a basic job that a high schooler could have. But yeah. What I just don't understand is that like businesses, they can treat some managers like above the ways that they treat entry level employees because of like the reliability and, you know, general vibe of that manager. To have been a manager demonstrates that they were competent in that. But it's like if it's a problem of training those specific people to be competent trainers, then that should have its own system with its own guidelines towards success and failure. Like I've got a lot of friends that basically go into industry, and a lot of the people that are in those positions don't teach them how to do the job. They teach them like basic understanding of like what to do, but they don't really give them like a how to do it strategy. And they'll point and just delegate and not solve problems or like come to new solutions together at all. It makes for like this really annoying system where like, especially, I'll speak specifically in context of engineering, and people in the comments can tell me like if this is the same thing in your industry, if it's like, you know, finance business, or like if you're like not necessarily even like a white collar position. Like I've seen guys that work in factories that have the same complaint about managers. But it's like nobody's teaching anybody anymore how to successfully do the job. Like they might teach you like, hey, this is how this machine works. This is how this thing, like this is how this software works. This is how our workflow with this software works. But they won't teach you like, hey, here's who to talk to get this problem solved. Here's how to like rely on other people. Here's how to like think about problems in a way that like leans towards solutions. Like they're not really good at teaching that stuff. And so it leads to like those people usually retiring or getting fired because they're not immediately useful. And then the people that are coming up behind them to replace them are just like strictly not as valuable or something because they can't get into the same capacity for work and operation that they could have if they had like a competent trainer or somebody that like knew what was going on enough to be capable of teaching them in a really explicit way. And it just kind of sucks because like I see this like regularly time and time again, like even outside of the specific jobs that I work, and even outside of my experience, like it'd be friends or it'd be family, enough in concrete, you know, prospects that like it's just really frustrating to see all the time. So I guess this like kind of comes back together, where like I'd like basically to ask people watching this, hey, pay attention to things that are going on around you, you know, in a better context than just like doing what's immediately convenient. I think like I've just seen that enough to where it's like what happens when people like kind of really give a shit, and where the system doesn't really crush them either, I guess, which is a rare enough instance. But systems that I've seen, it's weird. Like people that are above those managers usually want there to be change, but they just don't know how to bring about that change. And if it's just a problem of people collaborating, like that, maybe that's its own issue. And I mean, I don't know. Maybe this all comes across as someone that just doesn't understand industry asking like really stupid and open-ended questions. But I think this kind of amounts to what I'm getting at. Like, there's a training issue in industry. People don't know how to trust each other. People don't know how to like pay attention to like what's ahead. They only pay attention to like what's immediately in front of them. And like people in the know who are rapidly being outmaneuvered by technology, like the managers, and rapidly outmaneuvered by technology and future solutions, know that they're only relevant if they keep their knowledge a secret. You know, like those people on the and then people on the bottom of the totem pole can only pretend to adapt and grow to their expectations, which don't make any sense anymore, while like secretly subverting them the entire time. And that just seems like a shitty situation to be in. Like, why haven't people decided to change that? I don't know. It usually kind of results in some kind of standoff where the majority of people are just waiting for someone to show themselves off a little too hard and then completely isolate and drill into that guy so that, like, you know, everything could just be pinned on it. And there's always a scapegoat. Like, there's always a scapegoat. My wife, whenever she was first started working, like, that's what happened to her. And now she hates engineering. She's like, oh, all engineering is like this. And it's like, I don't know if that's true, but I do know that that's what happened to her, you know? Like, that behavior paradoxically is rewarded by upper level people because they want to have scapegoats and they want to have people figure that out. But like, also upper level like management like want better adoption of technology and systemic decisions, but then they don't let people come in and make changes. It's like this like middle manager king of the castle type thing, but then those same kings like don't take it upon themselves to like think about things at like a meta level to like know what things are going on. And I've just seen businesses die over that enough to where I'm just interested to figure out like who else out there's got weird little stories to share or whatever. You know, and I don't want this to come across like I'm just have a massive bone to pick with middle managers or blue collar people or even white collar people of the world. But workers who are just entering industry don't really have a good conception of what they're getting up to and like going to end up doing. I think generally the best solution that exists comes in form of communicating this issue publicly and even going for further to ensure that you're not failing or falling for the pitfalls that I'm talking about. I think further the best thing for younger working people is to figure out how to like best connect with the people ahead of you. Pick out a mentor, like just find a person that just knows what they're doing enough, but like is communicative to not be like a waste of time. And then like hold on to that guy. Cause I think those people are genuinely rare enough to where they're honestly the same value as like getting a master's degree. You know, like if you find like a really good mentor, like that's some insane shit. Like really, really figure out how to do that. I've seen how big businesses conceal those people behind multiple levels of bureaucracy to specifically prevent that relationship, because that kind of relationship can rise to the top incredibly fast when done right. The weird thing is about being in a mentor environment is that like a mentor knows that that's how valuable they are, and they'll sometimes hold that against you. And I argue that makes them not eligible to being a mentor. But like a good rule of thumb that I've followed, which has like brought me to people that are really worth following, was like asking yourself like, are they most generally right, even though if I might feel an immediate reaction they're wrong? Like that's almost always a really good indicator for a mentor. And I think for final advice, I mean, if this video could really be amounted to any kind of like usefulness to people watching, and not just be like what it is, which is a rant about frustrations I had this week, like seek advice only from people whose parts of lives like you want to communicate, like you want to replicate. Getting out there and just saying to people like, hey, I want to hear from you, like what you think about this topic. When you say that, what you're asking really is like, do you have A, experience in this subject, and B, I want to replicate that experience. Can you show me how? And if that person is just a person whose experiences are not worth replicating, their advice is worse than useless. I know this is ironic coming from like some fucking idiot on YouTube just like talking to you about like whatever it is that he experienced at work that month or whatever, but I think that that's kind of a litmus test that I followed for finding some of the people that have really impacted me in a positive way. But I'm interested to hear some people's thoughts. Like, you know, just let me know if this has been resonant with anybody, or if I should just stop making videos altogether. This would be like a first upload that I've had that I actually wanted to take a little serious. But, you know, and if this is something that people liked, just like it and tell me what you think. All right. Thanks for watching.